One of my biggest goals for this was for it to turn into something that follows me around and follows my day and follows my life and my week about, things that are just the theme of that day or things that are reoccurring throughout however long. So I'm standing here now doing my hair and my skincare simultaneously somehow. And I was deep, deep, deep in my thoughts pretty much all day, but I'm now kind of starting to form something. So that's why I turned on the mic. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about my relationship with myself and about specifically recently about how my judgment towards myself is starting to feel like it's much more prevalent and impacts me more than any judgment that I think I might be getting from anything or anyone external. I had this thought a few weeks ago, and then I just kind of like wrote it down and moved on and didn't really think too much of it. But the more and more I started thinking about it, the more I realized that I even think that my judgment towards myself and my unwillingness to forgive myself for certain things, or my self-critic, which everyone says you're your worst critic. And honestly, that has a new meaning now because my judgment towards myself, at least in my personal experience, it gets projected onto other people. So then I start to have judgment for other people for things to make myself feel better, maybe. But also, like, I do a lot of it subconsciously, and I've been better about checking it, but it's still there, and I am trying to get to the root of why that root is still there. And so my judgment then gets projected on other people. I start judging other people, and then also on top of that, I start placing my judgments onto other people. So then I automatically assume, or I'm walking around with the feeling that people are judging me, if that makes sense. So not only am I judging myself, I'm judging other people, but then I also feel like other people are judging me. And what I've noticed over the past few, I guess, days, weeks, whatever, I've been thinking about this, is that the moments that I feel judgment, no matter where it's coming from, whether I'm giving it or receiving it, or if I feel like I'm giving it or receiving it, when I check myself, how am I feeling in that moment? 9 times out of 10, it's been I'm feeling insecure about something and I'm beating myself up about it. And then I feel judged. I feel judged by myself. I feel judged by others. And then when I take the next step into grace, as soon as I come back in with grace for myself or grace for the person that maybe I was subconsciously judging, then immediately I feel lighter, I feel better. I'm not holding something over someone. And all of this is happening like inwardly. Like, this is not me actually like to their face judging someone. But I feel like a lot of judgment that is in my space is coming from me passing judgments on myself most of the time. And the initial note, I just went and found the initial note that I wrote about this topic that kind of sparked all of this. And I wrote, I want to be free and authentic as I move through the world. I can start with being free and authentic with myself. I don't need to perpetuate judgment. Maybe then I'll stop projecting. This came from a moment that I had, and I don't even really remember the context or where I was, but I just remember the feeling of I did something that felt very me and very free, and I was like, for a split second, like uber confident, and I was doing something that really made sense to me. I don't know any better way to describe it. I just felt really, really home and really, really truly, utterly myself for a short period of time. And then immediately after, I judged what I had just done, and it wasn't even anything bad. It was more of like a feeling or a thought. Like, I wasn't doing anything physical, but I just like judged whatever had just happened with me. And I realized that there's no possible way that I can get to my goal of finding out who I am and moving through the world as that person confidently if I am immediately judging myself? Like, how can I even consider what other people think of me if I'm already judging myself? And that started the spiral of, okay, so maybe all of these insecurities that I feel like are holding me back are things I'm just projecting into the world. And, you know, no one's really thinking about it. Nobody's really seeing that out of you, but you are bringing it up and you're putting it out there. And that's what this version of you that they're seeing. Like, you are perpetuating and creating this version of you, the same version of you that you're trying to break away from. And so that was a very interesting moment because I felt like pure authenticity, and then I felt immediate judgment for that authenticity that now I look back in, and now that's something that I've since then been trying to like tap into. And then it also kickstarted me to sit down and record this finally after many trials, many like rehearsal recordings, because I realized when I create something, I immediately judge it. I immediately judge it, even though it felt so freeing when I was creating it. But then when I look back on it, I'm judging it. And that makes me not want to share it with people because I've already judged it. And in this book that I'm reading, The Creative Call, I will try to find this quote swiftly, but it generally talks about how we don't have a right to judge ourselves even. Like, we don't have a right to judge anybody, and that includes ourselves. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. I'm taking a gap here just to explain something before I read this excerpt from the book. Is that this book talks about the relationship between God, the spirit, spirituality, the spirit realm, and artistry. And so it's using the word God, but I think it's important to note that different people say God. It has different meanings to different people. And that is certainly something that I plan to talk about in a different episode of this. I will get to it. I promise. Don't you worry. I have lots to say on it. But for these purposes right now, so I can continue with this episode, when I say God, when I talk about God, I'm just talking about the overarching thing that we all know is there, but no one can really explain fully. And we'll leave it at that. But I'm going to read this little chunk from this book that I'm reading called The Creative Call, An Artist's Response to the Way of the Spirit. I'm going to be skipping around. I'm just going to read the portions that I highlighted. The problem with this kind of thinking, apart from the fact that it's self-defeating, is that it's based on assumptions we have no right to make. It is not our place to decide for ourselves whether we are good enough to glorify God with our talent. By adopting this attitude, we assume that we know best what to do with our gifts, to bury them and avoid public humiliation. Okay, yeah, I think she does talk about arrogance a little bit later in the book, and how it's almost arrogant to assume that something that you are this passionate about and something that flows from you, whether you realize it or not, is something that is not good enough to share with people. And you are kind of putting a lid on yourself, on this part of yourself that's probably the thing that you're looking for, the thing that you feel like is missing from you, because you are judging it before you give anybody else the chance to judge it. And that is a barrier you are putting up yourself. It's a huge realization for me, because I've been dealing with this inability to really fully connect with people, like on a real level. There's some people, at least in my life, that like, even if I have that wall up, they'll stand right outside of it, and that's a beautiful thing and that I'm so grateful to have in my life. But it's the tearing down the wall and actually being able to let people in is what I've been working on. So it's interesting going back to that moment that I had, just having this moment where I was so happy and free finding. Like, I feel like I was like, I didn't even know how to spell wall. And then I immediately judged it. And isn't that the thing that we're looking for? To be able to live freely and authentically and find joy in ourselves and not try to grab on it from external sources? Well, at least, yes, for me, that's actually what I'm trying to do. Um, and as it relates to my artistry, I love being an artist. I love creating, but I don't ever think that I make anything good enough to share. Like, something about that doesn't really make sense, actually, saying it out loud. It's like this one thing takes up my entire life, and I love living in it, and I love making things, and I love watching other people make things. I'm convincing myself that that's not where I'm supposed to be focused, and that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. It doesn't make sense. Yes, I have another idea that I will talk about later that talks about how I really genuinely think that the thing that you're most passionate about, the thing that you were drawn to when you were a child, the thing that makes you the most happy, the thing that doesn't even feel like work, the thing that while you're doing it time flies by, is the thing that you are supposed to be doing, the thing that is supposed to be what your life is about. But that's a different episode, but it ties into this and how we don't have a right to judge ourselves in our most authentic, happy, pure states. That also comes with our dark states, our heavy moments, our moments that we don't understand, our scary moments. We don't have a right to judge ourselves. And when we go through stuff like that, we should be protecting ourselves and learning about ourselves and letting ourselves experience these things without judgment. Because, newsflash, everybody goes through this. Everybody has moments that they're not proud of. Everyone has things about them that they wish were different. And that's okay. These are normal and natural things to feel. But I've experienced it firsthand in the past few months. As soon as I started allowing myself to have moments instead of trying to force myself into a life and a person that seemed acceptable to me, to what I thought I should look like, or what is passable in the world. And as soon as I started to figure out what was passable for me, and I started to release judgment off of myself, and I started to forgive myself, it became literally 4 times easier to forgive other people, to stop judging other people, to give people the benefit of the doubt, which is something I claimed to have always done, but I'm now realizing that I was just never external about it. Like, I would judge people, but I wouldn't talk about it. And I would say I forgive people, but I didn't actually. But when I started to forgive myself and stop judging myself, I realized all of that was projection. All of that had nothing to do with them and everything to do with, oh, I've done something like that and I didn't forgive myself for it, so I can't forgive you for it. Subconsciously, like, these narratives were not going through my head. This is all retrospect, but that's how I was feeling. Or I judge someone and compare it to something that I'm feeling guilty about, and I'd be like, well, it's not as bad as that, and they shouldn't do that, is kind of how I was coming at it. But I would never talk about it, so I thought that I was a good person because I wasn't, gossiping about people. And putting grace upon myself allowed me to extend grace to other people. And it's still a work in progress. Like, I'm still working on it. I still catch myself maybe making a judgment, and then I have to reevaluate, why am I making that judgment? And it's like a lot of in my head space work, but I'm noticing it now. And I also am noticing things that used to bother me. Now I understand better and I can empathize with. And that is, I think, a huge step forward for me, going from this fake forgiveness, this fake grace, this, contingency type mindset to genuinely feeling healing in areas that I needed to forgive, and genuinely being able to see different ways of life and different kinds of people and different kinds of spaces with genuine curiosity and wonder and excitement almost now, rather than immediately judging something or someone that I don't understand, or maybe that makes me a little uncomfortable or that scares me. And that has opened up so many windows and so many different areas of life for me. So that was really, really, really huge. Literally one of the main, if maybe not the only reason that I've been stalling on starting this and putting my thoughts out into the world has literally been because I convinced myself before I even tried that nobody would care about what I had to say, or that what I had to say wouldn't be as helpful to other people as I think it would be, which is interesting to think that it would be very helpful and to think that it's not going to be very helpful and nobody's going to care about it at all at the same time is one of the human contradictions that I deal with. But who am I to determine what other people need to hear? Or who am I to determine that this thing that has been on my heart for such a long time, like from even before I was able to conceptualize it and make it into a tangible idea, isn't that happening for a reason? Isn't that what I should be doing? Like a rhetorical question, obviously, but I'm saying this to say that if you have something that's following you, that's a common theme, and there's something that you're good at, and there's something that makes you happy, and there's something that if there's something that you would rather be doing with your life than what you're doing with your life right now, I believe that that's a sign, and that's what you should be going for. Now, in terms of the logistical steps, that's a whole different episode. But I encourage you to listen to that voice inside of you that is telling you what to do. There is literally something in us all telling us what to do. And I think it is so easy nowadays to completely write off that voice. And that is what I'm trying to do. I am documenting my self-discovery here because I wish that there was someone doing this and talking about stuff like this 3 years ago when I was going through the ringer because I didn't understand what was happening to me and why I was feeling all of these things. And I just, didn't understand anything. And I still don't understand anything. But I view that from a lens of potential and opportunity rather than being afraid and overwhelmed of what I don't understand. And that has shifted my mindset completely. And I think this is officially the first episode of the Rough Draft podcast. All right, I did it, guys. Yay.